Welcome to Hashtag On Point with Dr. Pam. I'm really excited about our next guest, the love coach. Her name is Judith Jameson. And if you want to find a date, or if you're in a marriage and maybe some things aren't going like you would like them to, or you're in the middle of a divorce, if that's one of your scenarios, let's meet Judith to see how she can help. Judith, welcome.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing? Actually, it's good afternoon at this point.
I know it is. Listen, I'm really excited to have you. Your decades of experience and your training and education and your humor, because you keep it so real, okay? You keep it so real when you talk about love. So I want to lean into that a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
All right. Well, I started out like everybody else thinking, hey, I'm going to go meet Mr. Prince Charming and get married, have kids, and that'll be the end of it. And we all know how that works out. Nope. So that didn't necessarily work as well. And my mom had gone through a difficult divorce. And fast forward in my mid to late 30s, I was having sort of a midlife crisis and I was feeling like I wanted to do something different. And I went to an awesome career coach, which I recommend for everybody. And she said, you need to be in medicine or law. So I thought, So fast forward a couple of years, I'm in law. I'm a paralegal, but I'm not liking what the divorce attorneys are doing or not doing for their clients. And that's how I branched out into doing what I do. I got various life coaching certifications, and I already had my paralegal degree. I also got highly trained, which I do every year, in domestic abuse and anger management, and lots of other specialty areas that I can help people with beyond just the issue in their relationship or the issue to find the relationship. And then it grew to the point where my divorcing clients, where I was helping them find attorneys and whatnot, they went through no divorce remorse. I guarantee my clients, because I uncover everything for them, which attorneys are like doctors. They don't tell everybody everything, but I do. So they're often leaving money on the table or custody time on the table. And I'm like, we need to fight for that. And once I'm done with all that advocacy work, then I was finding clients were calling me a year later saying, oh my gosh, the dating world is awful. I'm like, I know. Yeah.
So lean into that a little bit. I noticed you tell people what not to do on a date.
Right. I do. So one of the top things is do not meet somebody until you've talked with them on the phone first. And if that goes well and you think they're swimmingly awesome, then the next one is something like this. You use StreamYard or Zoom or FaceTime, whatever you do. I don't care which one you like. You cannot take the time to go meet somebody in person and be stuck somewhere until you've vetted them. And this is where people make a mistake. They're like, oh, I'm so excited. Somebody asked me out. And the next thing you know, I'm like, where are you? And they're like, oh, I'm at the such and such cafe. I'm like, what? No. You're weeks away from meeting that guy or that woman. Like, no, that's not part of the program. Get out of there.
Well, and I don't think many people know that, right? I don't think they spend that amount of time that you're suggesting to get to know someone before you decide if you want to meet them.
Exactly.
Right.
And if you back up, Pam, here's the biggest thing. You are assessing these people on dating apps. The majority of people, I don't care, people don't want to hear it. This is the truth. The majority of single people are meeting Mr. and Mrs. Right by going on a dating app or two. It's the reality. And they're finding their Mr. and Mrs. because when it's online, you can reach out 50 or 100 miles, but you wouldn't necessarily go to that town or city, but now you can because it's online. So even though people hate the online process, it actually is better because there's no way your Mr. Right is going to be in the bar that you go to that night. So if you think that's how you're going to meet Mr. Right, you're completely wrong. That is just like a one-off in a gazillion. It's like trying to find a diamond in a pond.
Well, right? And I imagine when you're helping people find a date, you're attempting to ask them things about themselves that can help them maybe be more aware, because maybe they don't want to go to a bar to meet someone to begin with.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So the finding the date, the key part is learning the basics of dating, which a lot of people never had because their parents didn't teach them this. All we learned was don't do this, don't do that. So mine is more proactive. What to say, what not to say. How long are you going to talk on the phone? How long is your date when you meet in person? Where do you go for your first date? Where do you go for your second date? What do you wear? All of that.
And you have some success stories you want to share? Because,
I love all the areas of where I work. And the dating thing is great because even people that went through a terrible divorce, when they come back like a year and a half later, I can help them date well and better and meet a better Mr. and Mrs. Right. They maybe weren't married to the right person to begin with. And so my success stories are basically, if you take your hands off the wheel and you let Judith do the driving for a few weeks, then you're going to learn, because what they see is, oh, that's what I do when someone gives me a like or a heart online, right? So I am them for the first week or two. They don't know how to write their profile because it's just like writing your own resume.
So wait a minute, you mean first you help them emotionally understand the likes and hearts, but then you help them create the profile if they want to find a date.
If they're going to work with me for date coaching, and you have to be online, right? It's all about online dating. It's not just how do you date that cute guy at work that wants to ask you out? No, this is about how to date a lot of people, date a lot of frogs. You don't have to kiss all the frogs, but how to date a bunch of
you don't have to kiss them. Okay, well, that's good.
You don't have to kiss them.
You don't want any special warts.
No, but it is a numbers game. And that's one of the things where I tell them you have to get out of your comfort zone, because the problem is you married that date when you were 26 years old because you were desperate. Your clock was ticking. You wanted kids, and you just didn't want to be dating out there anymore. And we settle. This is not about settling. This is about taking the time for 2 to 3 years before you are settled into a full-time relationship that could lead to partnering together or getting married. And one of the things that helps is I write the profile, and they're like, oh, but I really like my profile. I'm like, well, how's that working for you? Because obviously,
good point.
It's not working for you because you're using me as a date coach. You're not meeting Mr. and Mrs. Right, right? And so sometimes, like the guys, they like to brag about their, like what they do with like with their cars and stuff, or they like to have pictures of their cars, or they like to show themselves like, working out, or like I just saw a profile today where the guy, he shows himself doing a flip. So somebody took a picture. I'm like, well, a lot of people can do flips and we can't see your face. So that's the stupidest picture I've ever seen on a profile. Like, right. And so the other thing is the pictures. What kind of pictures do you put on your profile? What do you not put on your profile? And I just had that on my podcast today. We looked at men's pictures. Next week, I'm doing women. But today it was, ladies, this is a yellow flashing flag. This is a red flashing flag. What's wrong with these men, right? And we found a couple that were great. One guy, I'm like, I got to find this guy and say, I can help. I can find you somebody. You are great. But what we're looking at is one guy had 15 pictures. A lot of them were kind of like the same. So it was kind of stupid. One is like, you can see the fish right here. And then the next one, the camera, his friend backed up and you can see him standing waist up with the big fish. I'm like, it's the same picture. Yeah. Okay. You're a doofus. Right. My other pet peeve with pictures, and mostly men do this, women don't usually do it. They're in their bathroom. I don't want to see the tile in your bathroom. I don't want to see part of your shower curtain behind you, right? And I don't want to see your ugly mirror that you have, your ugly medicine cabinet that's like circa 1940s. I'm like, well, I already don't like you because your bathroom is so outdated. Like, do you have
so guys are normally taking pictures with
a lot? Oh no, but this is my favorite one. like this, right?
And you can see the phone. Oh,
you can see the phone. Today if you enlarged one of the guys' pictures that we were pulling up, we were on Match.com on my podcast. Lou, who's my studio manager, he's like, wow, we can even see the CRV code on the back of that. It was like, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. We can see the guy's credit card stuff. I'm like, you're a doofus. Another guy had this.
People need you.
I know, they need me. You know, other people have like this. There was another guy, I think it was the fishing guy. He had like two buddies next to him. They're holding their beers. And in the background is like a bunch of waitresses and a lot of women sitting at like, you know, little tables and stuff. And I'm like, I'm so distracted by your picture. I can't take it. I'm like, plus it took me a minute to figure out which one was you because your friends look like you, right? You're a doofus. Then we had one guy that took 3 pictures sitting in the same brown leather chair, hardly any lighting. So it was at night. He probably had his TV on for the lighting, right? And 3 of the same picture, except one of them was really dark and he had his hair down, and the other 2, his hair was pulled back. So he obviously has, you know, long hair. I was waiting for the man bun picture, but we didn't get one of those.
Well, and I bet they listen to you because you're trying to get them to show more of a complete picture of who they are or what they do.
Right. Exactly.
In an authentic way, but not in the bathroom or in the brown chair all the time.
Right.
Wherever they are.
Well, exactly. So if you like to hike, go hiking with a friend, right? You know, you're going to rest at a rock or at the summit or next to a waterfall and have a friend take a picture of you. And I don't mean far away. Okay. Even my flowers behind me are too far away. I don't want to see you standing over there next to a waterfall. The waterfall's cool. I get it. It's appropriate for your memory photo album. It's not appropriate for your dating app. I don't really need to see the waterfall. I've seen a waterfall before. I'm not like completely sheltered. Okay. I've been outside my house. What I want to see is your face, right?
Right.
The other thing is the first picture out of 4 or 5 needs to be like what you and I look like right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a headshot, right? Mm-hmm. It can be in your car because guys like to do selfies in the car, but we looked today on my podcast at good selfies in the car and bad selfies in the car. So a bad one is when you hold your phone down by your little stick shift thing and you're looking down. You have to be looking up at, just like you and I are looking at each other right now. You are looking down. That's like, what the heck? Also, I'm a huge fan of getting your sport in it, but not in a goofy way. So if I like to play tennis, I might be leaning on the tennis net, holding my tennis racket. And I'm wearing my white shorts and whatever. But I can't be far away because the point is not to show me that I don't want to see the whole court and I don't want to see all the netting. But I do like the fact that you were sweating your butt off and you like to play tennis. I like to play tennis.
Oh, I see.
If you like to go canoeing or kayaking, you may go with friends. Tell your friend to get in front of you and turn around and take your picture on a kayak. I mean, how hard is that? It's not. Right?
Well, you're helping them to think about it differently.
Right. And then we get into the profiles, and that's a whole other world for a complete show on profiles. Okay. But people that don't answer any of the questions and they don't put the summary, next.
Right.
If they don't care enough to tell you about themselves, they're just getting on and they're players. Get off. Do not even write to those people because that might not even be their photo. They're just on there to play around and be an idiot. If you're going to go on a dating app and take the time and, by the way, spend the money, you need to buy it. Do not go for the freebie. That's like, idiots times 10.
Why is it that there's more features to
there's more features, and I can see if you paid it or not. Like on Match.com, I can see right there next to your main pictures, the first picture out of your album, I can see right there if you're a premium subscriber or not. If you paid 10, 15, 20 bucks a month, I know you're serious. If you're not paying, you got to pay to play. I got a job so I could buy a $10,000 car. I think that if I want to spend a little money to find a wife or a husband, I think $20 a month is pretty reasonable.
Oh, right. I see. And maybe they have algorithms or something that matches, that helps behind the scenes when the profile's filled out completely. I don't know.
I don't know.
Thank God I've never needed to use them.
Yeah, lucky you. I know, right?
Right.
Exactly. And then, there's different web dating apps. Some of them are only on the phone. Some of them, the ones I like, are not on the phone. They're accessible on your desktop as well, because I think that's a pain to spend an hour searching for people on this, because it's a lot smaller. But that's really it with date coaching. And I would say that I'm really good at it because I've been there myself.
Right.
Not only.
Well, and I can imagine your stories about what not to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of what not to do's. But a lot of what I'm teaching my clients is what to do, which is very different than what they normally do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is the timing, right? So a date shouldn't be 6 hours long because you get along.
No.
Right? You need to, because when you do that, you're attaching yourself. You're becoming a little bit enamored, and the honeymoon phase and the endorphins are starting to kick in, and that will cloud your vision with other men and women. So it's a quick hit. It's a numbers game. And then we look at the 20 or 30 people that you've been talking with, and we decide which 5 or 6 you're going to actually get on the phone with. And maybe you meet with 3 of them. But again, you don't want to waste your time, because the person that you gave Saturday dinner to, you might know within 1 second that this is a bad choice. And now you're stuck with dinner. So you never go on dinner dates until like the 3rd or 4th date.
Right. Because then,
coffee.
It's not enough to say, or not enough in common, or
no, it's not. It's just,
and why spend that time if the person's not a fit on some basic levels? Which, back to your profile point, you help people with that profile piece, helping, right? I mean, So that's powerful.
Yeah. And not to brag, but as my husband says, but if it's true, it's not bragging.
It is true. So tell us a little bit, because I know you have some serious success stories, both in dating, in marriage, because your coaching is very different. I don't even like to use the counseling, marriage counselor, because anyone I know who went to marriage counseling, it didn't work.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So with the date coaching, in 2019, my husband and I went to 9 weddings, and none of them were our friends. They were all my clients.
Nice.
Now it took.
I was like, not a wedding crashers.
Not a wedding crasher. Right. But the reality is, it took them 2.5 to 4 years to get there. But they started the process 2.5 to 4 years earlier. Some of them went out with someone for a year and a half. And we made the decision that this guy or this woman, this just wasn't working. And it's time we need to cut the cord now. The longer this goes on, the longer Mr. and Mrs. Right is out there, and you're not meeting them. So you've given them more than enough time. I even have one couple. The guy was in Chicago and the woman was in San Jose. It was a great fit from the outside, but he had strings attached to his mom, and his mom was evil. I'm sorry, but some of us moms, I have to try hard not to get involved with my son's marriage, because it's what I do. And I had to not call him every night. I had to back away. But there are mothers out there that have this mommy son thing, and they can't let their sons go off and figure life out on their own. And you know what? Us single women, when we're single, we don't like that. Right?
Right.
I'm sorry, but I don't want a guy whose mom is calling every night at 7:00 when we're trying to watch TV or eat dinner. I just don't. It's not appropriate. And you need to learn.
And it goes back to your point about why you keep those initial dates short, because stuff like that will be revealed, and then you can help your clients to know that's likely not a fit. Right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So the date coaching is a blast. I'm very successful. I don't guarantee that someone will meet a husband or a wife. I guarantee that they will be meeting quality men and women within 4 months, because my process works. You just have to take your hands off the wheel. Hands off the wheel.
Let Coach Judith do it.
Right. Yeah. Beep, beep. And the marriage coaching, I got into that because during my divorce coaching, I found that there were men and women that were hearing about me, and their friends said, you need to call Judith. You need to call Judith. You know, you need help. And they may even be in the divorce process, but they don't want the divorce. So I was like, put the brakes on, right? Hey, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. I'm not singing. So if you don't want a divorce, I will help you coach yourself back into that marriage. And even if you end up leaving, you will have no divorce remorse. You will have done everything possible, everything humanly and not so humanly possible to work on that marriage. And if nothing else, you stay in that until you get your act together and you're not an angry person and you're not throwing pots and pans at your husband and you're not trying to run your wife over in the parking lot. You deal with the anger issues now, you get a grip on it, you deal with your emotions and the emotional roller coaster, and then worst case scenario, you're still going to process out and this marriage can't be saved, but you need to get your act together. You need to be showing the world that you're the better person. I don't care if the other person does crazy things and whatever, be the better person. Not only that, but I teach my clients, there is hope. You just think there isn't. Yep. You may not have said the right 3 or 4 words that your husband or your wife needs to hear. And they're like, well, I don't really know what those are. I'm like, yeah, well, after I learn about your marriage, I'm going to know what they are. Right?
That's right.
Yeah. Because when I say, well, tell me about that thing that happened in your marriage. And they're like, da, 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 da. I'm like, and then what did you do? And then they tell me, and I'm like, and what did you say? And then they tell me, and then I'm like, and what did your spouse say? And then they tell me what the spouse said. I'm like, yeah, pretty sure that scenario could have been done a lot differently. Right? You can't take back anything you already said and some dumb thing you already did. Today, you start from today. So even if you did a bunch of crappy things or your spouse did a bunch of terrible things, you go back and you say you're sorry. And they're like, but I'm not. I'm like, well, we're going to work on that.
There you go, Judith.
That's your problem. Because marriage means getting up when you're married and you're committed and you're a partnership. You're not 2 people doing life. You're a partnership. You said, I do. That means I do promise to choose you every morning, no matter what.
Yeah, people forget that. It is a choice. That is a choice. You are choosing your partner daily, or maybe you're not, but be conscious about it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And the other thing is, we've all heard this, and I swear it's a bumper sticker, right? Be the change. If you're going to sit around and wait for John to change all his bad habits, it isn't going to happen. You change your habits. You create boundaries. You create a healthy environment. You create the space for more time together. And, right now I'm doing a series of webinars with a fellow marriage coach out in California. So it's like East Coast, West Coast. And one of the things we're only doing it with women. We're doing it just for wives. And one of the things that we tell people is, if you're expecting somebody to change because you yelled at them, it's not going to happen. If you're expecting your husband to change because they know that you don't like something, it's not going to happen. You need to create a plan and present it and do the plan and be the plan, right? And that's the secret in the sauce right there. And the best part for me, so my fellow marriage coach, she works with wives primarily. She doesn't do couples coaching.
Okay.
I do couples coaching. When I have somebody a wife that's just like hurting and not sure what to do and whatnot, I send them to her. Most of what I do, if they're not coachable into the marriage, my main focus is working with the couples, because marriage counseling, traditional marriage counseling, where the 2 of you go in and talk about your crap for 45 minutes and then you leave, it has like a 98% fail rate. And the reason is, nobody wants to go in a room and have you talk about my mom, right? And you don't want to be in a room where I talk about your stinky feet and that you are a slob in the kitchen, right? Because we're supposed to go into traditional marriage counseling and talk about all our crappy stuff. And then we leave, and I'm going to be mad at you for 3 or 4 days because you can't take back what you said about my mom, right? And I didn't even know you felt that way about your beautiful mother-in-law. That's my mom, right? Oh my God. Did you just say that in front of the counselor? Like, yeah. And Then when you start talking about honest things, one of the spouses isn't going to like what you say. Like they're not comfortable with that topic, or they don't like the fact that you're throwing them under the bus, even though the counselor said, well, tell me what's wrong with that issue. Tell me about this issue. Whoa, cat's out of the bag there. Everybody knows how everybody feels. Nobody wants to go back. So traditional marriage counseling fails on lots of different levels. One is asking somebody how they feel about John going out drinking and coming back drunk at 3 a.m. That's the stupidest question. What wife is going to say, I felt great about that. That was a really good night for me. What the hell's wrong with you? Don't ask them how they felt. Right. And I know part of it is because they want the spouse to hear it. I'm like, trust me, based on the next day, he knows how she felt about that drunken night. Okay. We don't need to talk about that in marriage counseling. That's just bringing up.
I think you're bringing up a valid point, because I don't know why couples, or I guess they're just trying to do everything they can, but people don't frequently listen better to a partner because there's a stranger in the room.
Right. Right. They're not. And when you do what you're supposed to do, which is answer the questions that the therapist is asking, the other one's hearing it. So it doesn't work well. The difference is with coaching, I like to think of it in this way. So my marriage coaching has 100% success rate.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Judith, so, that is huge.
Right.
It's
There's
huge.
No therapist out there that can say that. In fact, almost every therapist will say, hell no, I'm not doing marriage counseling because it doesn't work. And it's awful. People come in, they yell, they scream. I've been in therapy in the past where I could hear a guy screaming at his wife next door. And, you would think you would have somewhat soundproofing of the rooms, but that's what they were there for. Like they're letting it rip. Like, this is how I feel and you need to listen to me. I'm like, whoa, whoever just heard that is not going to want to go back next week. I'm telling you that right now. But the marriage coaching it's kind of like, if you looked at the technical way of looking, if you looked at what is coaching, so soccer coaching. Mm-hmm. So if I were going to soccer camp and I was going to see a soccer therapist, the therapist would say, well, why don't you lie down on the couch and tell me what's going wrong? Right. And you'd be lying on the bench for 45 minutes. And then that's all that Blue Cross Blue Shield and all the others pay for. And so that's like, well, time's up. And you're like, time's up. I just got into it. No, bring it back next week. Right. If I have time to see you. So off they go. But for me, you come into any of my coaching, but in this case, you come for your marriage coaching help. I put the couple on the bench. I'm like, do not lie down. Do not fall asleep, because it's almost always at night because most people are working, right? And I'm like, pay attention. And they have to come with their notebook and their pen, and they're taking notes. And I'm like a teacher. I'm more like a teacher. So I don't.
And that's so appropriate, because coaches, that's what you're. Yeah. Okay. Right. Go ahead.
So that's what I do. I say, this is what the homework is. This is what we're going to work on. In the first meetings, I already asked them privately, one-on-one, what they thought the problems were with the marriage. It's not for me to assess whether they're right or wrong. It's just like, well, she thinks it's this, and he thinks it's this plus another thing. I'm like, great. We're going to work on that, and that other thing. That's where I'm going. Right. And anything else that I see along the way. So they have to sit, they have to watch, they have to be proactive, and then they have to role play in front of me. So I'll say, okay, Peter, Jane, you be quiet. Peter, I'm going to be your wife. And this is what I'm going to say. And then she's always going like, yeah, I would never say that. I'm like, well, that's the problem right there. So you be quiet, because you're going to get a timeout for 10 minutes. All right. Because you're next. Peter. And then I ask him a question, and he's laughing because she would never say that. I'm like, I'm serious. You got to practice it, because if I preach it and you don't practice, you're not going to know what to do. So I say something, and Peter's he's like, yes. I'm like, yes. No, be more excited. I asked you something, and you're going to say, yes, you want to do that with me, right? Yes, I'd love to garden I'd like to be gardening tomorrow. I'm like, yes. Well, can you drive me to the gardening center, and can we pick out some flowers together? He's like, I'm like, the answer is yes. You have a cheat sheet. For God's sakes, I just told you what your answers are. Everything I ask, the answer is yes.
That's powerful, Judith. Because the
right?
yeses. Mm-hmm.
It's the yeses. And then we role play on the opposite. So then I'm like, okay, I know I don't look like Peter. I'm a little shorter. I'm definitely not as handsome, but I'm Peter. I'm going to ask you a question. What's your answer? She's like, yes. I'm like, yes. No matter what I say, you're going to say yes, okay, followed by, that sounds like fun. So she didn't think it was fun to go to the recycle center. I'm like, I don't care. The answer is yes. I'm like, you can't flunk my test on the first meeting, so you better say yes, okay? And then they do this. I'm like, the following 2 words are never allowed. Yeah, but. I know it sounds like 1 word, but it's 2. Yeah, but. I'm like, I don't care about your feeling or opinion or what else you want to tell me. I don't care. They're like, okay, but. Well, that's the same thing. Same thing. You're busted. You cannot ever say, yeah, but. I'd love to go to the recycling center, but do not say that.
No, right.
Those 2 words, you cannot say, yeah, but, and you can't say, but.
Yes, that sounds exciting.
It is.
Getting back to the environment.
Getting back to the environment, and you're spending quality time with your loved one, right? But there's always a reward system. So it's like training dogs. If you do that, you can go get an ice cream together. If you do the chores together or you cook together, then you can have cookies for dessert. So there's always a treat, a carrot dangling at the end. So Peter looks forward to gardening for 3.5 hours because he knows that they're going to go get a beer together at a local brewery. Right? Do this, you get this. If you don't do that, you don't get the date night. Okay. So if I were you, I'd go along with it and get your shovel out, Peter. Yeah. Right. Then they have to keep track of everything, Pam. Dr. Pam. They have to every night there's homework and they have to write in their journal or their notebook because those things are what we're going to talk about next week. We're not talking about your mother-in-law. We're not talking about your smelly feet. We're not talking about your dirty dishes. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about positive, positive, positive.
Right.
Positive, positive. And making changes that don't feel comfortable, right? So, I mean, to be honest, how many times have you had a job in the past? And like, I remember this. So I was kind of defiant, I was a feisty little teenager. And then I had to work my way through college. So because we went to Maine in the summer and we were at an ocean, house on the ocean, we all had to waitress. So okay. Well, I do like people, but it skeeved me out to like have the dirty dishes and touch them. And stuff. So I had this thing that I created with like, I would take like a couple of napkins and I'd go over and I'd like, cause I didn't want to touch their dirty plates and stuff. And finally, like, the owner of the restaurant and I was like 17 or whatever at the time. She's like, yeah, that napkin thing you're doing, that's not happening anymore. I'm like, yeah, but she's like, no, you're skeeving them out because you make it look like you think they have so many germs. You're disgusted by them and you've got napkins to hold their plates. I'm like, that's not how it works around here. Everybody picks the plates and glasses up. Everybody brings them into the dishwashing area. Everybody washes their hands if they feel like it. And then everybody walks back out and they serve the other customers. I'm like, And I'm thinking to myself, it's not how I want to do it, but that's how I had to do it. Right. That's just the way it is. My buts were going nowhere. It's like, do what I said or you're losing your job. Then they would also be really picky about going over there like every couple of minutes. Is everything okay? Do you want anything else? I'm like, my God, I'm trying to get food to the other 5 people. I'm like, I'm sure if they need something, they'll do this. No, go and you check on them after a couple of minutes before they get into like, I don't want them to have more than 5 bites of their food. You need to see if it's okay.
Right.
Trust the process. Get your hands off the wheel, Judith. Your tips will go up. And I'm like, oh my God, I hate these people. But they were right. Right.
Well, that's powerful because if when people reach out to you for your coaching and you tell them hands off the wheel,
oh yeah,
I see that as value, whether someone is working with you to find and do dating well, find a date and date well and easily. Or if they're working through marriage or divorce, I bet you have to tell them often to take their hands off the wheel.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Well, and what you're right, because with the divorce process, people don't know what they don't know. And as soon as I get a new client who's separating or they're already separated, a lot of times they're already in the process and somebody said, you need Judith because something's not right with your attorney. I'm like, okay, that's great. Because that is what I do is I vet these attorneys. And if I think their attorney isn't doing a good job, I either talk to the attorney or we get rid of them. And the reality is you do have to do certain things. And with the divorce process, there is paperwork and there are timelines and there are, yes, you can go past the deadline. You're probably not going to get sued for it. But like in Massachusetts, some very basic paperwork, which we call the Rule 410, is 3 years of bank statements and investments, and basically all marital properties have to be accumulated. And you have literally you have 35 to 45 days. And a lot of people don't get that done on time. And I say, be the better person, get it in on time, because if that other attorney comes flying at your attorney, it's not going to look good in court. I had to chase that person for 90 days, Your Honor. They purposely didn't get me the paperwork. I can't make a decision today because they didn't get the paperwork in. Well, yeah, I don't care what your excuse is. If you have to pay the bank to print out 3 years of statements and it costs you $300 because you're a doofus and you don't know how to print it out, pay the $300. Nobody cares that you don't know how to print it out. Nobody cares that you can't do online banking. Nobody cares.
Right.
The law says we need those statements. And the judge is not going to make a decision until they have those papers. So
your experience in that legal lane really is an asset to people who reach out to you if they're in the middle of divorce or maybe they're contemplating it. But
right. But it's also the emotional parts of it, Pam. So, my clients, because I have the counseling background, counseling classes and all my life coaching certifications.
Which is huge. And we didn't lean into that in the beginning. Those share more about that. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So when I first left the law firms in Cambridge and Boston, my whole purpose was I want to serve these men and women who are coming into these law offices. And I know they're not getting the right advice and their attorneys don't care about them. And they're only telling them what they want to tell them. So, when you go to a doctor and they're like, oh, we need to amputate. And we're like, really? And, your brother says, well, maybe you should go see if you can get an antibiotic for that. So you go to another doctor for another opinion. The other doctor's like, yeah, I think I can treat that. That's why you never settle on the first attorney that you meet. And you don't go with Bob's recommendation, who's just a neighbor, because Bob thinks he had a great attorney, but Bob doesn't know. Bob actually probably didn't have a good attorney and doesn't even know it. Right. But I do all the vetting. But more than that, my background is also in the emotional. So it's not just the paralegal work and also having gone through divorce myself. It's also, I understand what keeps us up at night. And my clients get me nights and weekends. So
let's make sure everyone heard that correctly. Judith is available for her clients 24/7.
Right.
And lawyers don't do that.
Lawyers don't do that. They're 9 to 5. And the therapist doesn't do it either. Mm-hmm. The other thing is the therapist is required to only see their clients in an office in any state, right? There's all these regulations, which is why I did not want to be a licensed social worker or a psychologist, because I want to see my clients outside the office. I want them to be able to come to my backyard and sit outside with me. I want to go take a walk with them, or I'm Zooming with them and I'm giving them all kinds of advice at 10 o'clock at night.
Right. And
a therapist isn't going to do that. The other thing is, so right now I have several clients. Most of my clients are in other states.
Okay.
So last year, just one example of the same thing. So I had a client that was in a domestic abusive situation that night. So she calls me at, I don't know, it was like 9 o'clock her time. So it was like 10 o'clock for me. She lives outside of Chicago. So I'm like, keep your phone on, get in the bathroom, lock the door. Call the police department. Don't hang up with me. Make it a 3-way call. So she did. So I could hear everything. And I said to her, when you get on with the police, tell them that they're not going to know what I am. They don't understand it yet, but you're going to say, I have my friend on the phone too. She told me to call you. She's concerned. and her name is Judith. And so I said, hi, like Officer Brown, I'll let her tell you her story, but I'm very, very concerned. And I think there needs to be a wellness check. I think someone needs to go out there, but I'm telling you right now, when you show up, he's going to look normal. He's going to be totally low key, and she's not going to be able to talk to you in front of him, because once you leave, he's going to beat the crap out of her again. So that was the scenario. And so that's how we walked through it. I always have my clients keep me on the phone when they go into the court. When they go in, like I had another client down in Florida a couple of days ago over the weekend, and she needed to go file for a restraining order. It was an emergency restraining order. So that meant she had to go down to the police department. It was on the weekend, so the court wasn't open. So I'm like, keep your phone on, get out of the house right now, get in your car, keep the phone on. We're going to talk the whole time. So I could keep her calm. I could keep her focused. I worked through some breathing exercises. So I didn't want to talk about the situation until she got to the police department. And then when she got to the police department, I said, when you walk in, you need to tell them that, like, I'm on here, like, and so let's do that. And that's what we did.
Wow.
So it's not just available for you to call and cry. It's when there's something comes up outside of our scheduled appointment.
Right.
That we talk.
Well, and that sets you apart.
Right. And that's,
Judith, you're really there for your clients.
Right. I'm there for my clients. Exactly. Well, the other thing too is, even if somebody goes on a date, if they got creeped out and they feel like the person is like, they felt like they were just creeped out. They're like, during the date, they talked about lots of things that I never shared. So I feel like they've been like really researching about me, then they have me to talk to afterward, but their date might be over at 10:30 at night after dinner. They have to call me after every date. They call me before the date, during the date, after the date. So in the middle of the
nice.
Yeah, they have to go to the bathroom or step outside. Hey, my babysitter called. I'll be right back. And then they call me, right? Or I call them and they're like, oh, sorry, it's my babysitter. Hold on, I have to give me 2 minutes. Yeah. So I do that with them because I want to see what's going on, and I want to make sure that they're on track. But the marriage coaching is key because most fights are not happening during the day because one of them is usually working.
Right.
The kids aren't acting up during the day because they're in school.
Right.
Or they're in daycare. So everything happens nights and weekends. If you're going through a divorce, when did everything happen? Everything happens on like Sunday night. Jane is not there at 5:00, and it's now 6:30. Jane had the kids for the long weekend. She's supposed to have them back. They're not back. What do you do?
Right.
You call me. So I'm like nanny 911. I'm like,
no, love 911. I think
it's it. I'm love 911.
Right.
Yep.
Well, Judith, I wanna make sure everyone knows. Judith Jameson is referred to as the love coach, and she's catch the replay if you missed us today. She's referred to as the love coach for a reason, and she stays in those spaces of dating if you want to find a date, marriage, as well as divorce, if that is the position that people find themselves in. And her coaching is significantly different. And, I want to just make sure people know this, that you attended 9 weddings. She attended 9 weddings from her previous clients. So that's huge. And I want to make sure people know that your podcast is on Tuesdays, right?
That's right. I was on that earlier today. It's live over Facebook.
Yep. Okay. Yep. And then if people want to reach out to you, I want to make sure they know how. JudithJameson.org.
Yep. They can email me from that, or they can always call or text me if they want to. 781-249.
Here, I'll type it. 781.
Yep. 249. 1770.
Okay. And then 1770. People can reach out to you.
Yep.
You're so good for people, Judith. Okay. I mean, it's beautiful to know you and be in your world. And I really appreciate what you do for people. And that love piece is not just in relationships, it's self-love. That's what you're helping people. It's profound. So, okay. With that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Judith.
Thanks for having me, Pam. I really enjoyed myself. This was great.
Yeah, no, your candor is what people, I mean, I just I love your candor.
Yeah.
No
There it is.
nonsense.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. I'm like your mom, but I'm not.
Well, and I imagine the clients listen to you better anyway.
Well, yeah. And I also say I'm like your best friend, but I'm not, because I care enough about you to tell you the truth that your friends aren't going to tell you.
That's right.
Right.
Mhm.
And a lot of times our friends give us bad advice because they're just going along with our dumb ideas. Like, yeah, you need to ditch her. Yeah, you need somebody better, somebody more fun. It's like, well, no, actually, maybe you just need to work on yourself.
Right.
And that's the problem. So yeah, I'm not like, I don't agree with everything their friends are saying. Let's put it that
No,
way.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And people benefit from that for so many reasons.
Right.
Mhm.
100%. You're right, Pam. You're absolutely right.
All right, reach out to Judith Jameson, the love coach. If you need a date, you want to find a date and keep a date. If you want to get married, or perhaps you're in the middle of a divorce, Judith can help you. Thank you, Judith.
That's right. Thank you. Take it easy.